Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I am one of your hosts, Derek, and your other host, Ryan, is right here with me.
That's right, I am, and we're doing one of probably the most hotly anticipated movies by our three fans out there, Con
Including me,
Air.
or
No, that's including you. No, I every time I tell people I do a Nick Cage podcast, there's like one of three movies that pops up. They said, "Have you done this movie?"
and
And
that
this is
is
this is one of them usually.
1997's Con Air.
Yeah.
I mean, what a movie this is. I mean, so you've got Nicolas Cage, John Cusak, John Malkovich, Colm Meaney, Ving Rhames, Dave Chappelle, Steve Buscemi, Danny Trejo. Like, it's a stacked cast. Directed by Simon West, written by Scott Rosenberg, who both have worked with Nicolas Cage in other situations. Simon West directed Stolen, which we've covered on the show, and Scott also wrote Gone in 60 Seconds. And for
Huh?
John Cusack fans, he also wrote High Fidelity. Um, this movie is about, quote, a newly paroled ex-con and former U.S. Ranger Cameron Poe finds himself trapped in a prisoner transport plane when the passengers seize control.
Yes. And it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I think the last time I saw it was when we did our Cage Miss on our last podcast.
Yeah.
And that was probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, maybe more.
It was
I don't
probably
know.
about 5 years ago. I think it was winter of 2020.
Yeah.
This December
So
2020.
it's, I this movie, I think Derek and I can both say that we've loved for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I watch it as an adult, the more I realize how bad of a movie it really is. But
Oh
it
no.
doesn't change the fact that I love it.
Okay, okay.
But like it's one of those movies that is so bad that it's good.
Hmm.
I think, and we'll cover it. This is definitely going to be a more comprehensive kind of different uh version of our review that we did, because we, like I just said, we did do it on Screen Heroes, but that was a much different format.
Right.
This one's definitely gonna be more in-depth and comprehensive review of this movie than I've done before. So
I did think it was funny. It did win a Razzie. It won a Razzie for worst reckless disregard for human life and public property.
that seems fitting.
Right? I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. I think,
Um,
while I was watching this movie, I was like, why? What is it about this movie that makes me love it so much? And I think I know what it is, at least part of it. So
okay.
you and I grew up in a time when the more masculine a movie is, the more we tend to like it, I guess. Like you had your Rockies and you had your Terminators and you had your all Big Trouble in Little China. You had all these movies with these 80s action stars that were just beefy and they were just ultra masculine and not like I hate using that word because of the toxic masculinity kind of stuff that's a
Right.
problem in society, but more just like sweaty guys doing traditionally manly things, with muscly, sweaty and just guys getting dirty, doing guy things, wearing tank tops, you
Hmm.
know. And this movie is a lot of that, and I think it kind of just harkens back to those movies, and that's kind of why I like it. I think it's a lot of the appeal for me.
Yeah, this is peak 90s across the board, right? Like,
Right.
and it's a Bruckheimer film. He produced it, and there's the slow motion shots. There's just super cheesy dialogue, and you know, Nick's got like a shirtless. He's shirtless, or not shirtless, but a sleeveless shirt most of the movie, and there's like two women in the whole film who actually have lines. So yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right from that standpoint. There's not a lot of
See,
substance here.
you're right that it's very 90s, but I think the soul of it is more 80s than anything, because of the way it handles having all these big actors, and just because there weren't a lot of like super hyper masculine movies in the 90s like there were in the 80s. Um,
Yeah, I guess I always put this in the same bucket as like Bad Boys.
But even that movie wasn't super masculine.
You don't think so?
It wasn't on the same level as something like Predator or
No.
Terminator, whereas this movie I
Yeah,
think was
I
on that
gotcha.
same,
Interesting.
you know
That's
what I'm saying?
interesting.
Like it was Bad Boys is a good action movie,
Yeah.
but it's not like it's not fixated on its masculinity so much as it is just on the action and the dialogue. Whereas this movie was definitely not fixated on dialogue by any stretch of the imagination.
Mm. That's interesting. No, I think that's an interesting take.
But yeah, if you have or have not listened to this podcast before, I'm about to explain it to you either way. But usually we go through chronologically. I'll take notes throughout the movie, and then we'll just kind of try and decipher what I meant by those notes, or just discuss the things I've notated throughout the movie. Um, yeah. So you ready to dig into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Let me get. I had a lot of notes on this one, so all right. The movie opens with the history of the Army Rangers for some reason. It
I
has
forget.
no bearing on anything else that happens in the movie. Literally, it could be any branch of any military, and it doesn't matter.
I forget that that scene exists every time I sit down to watch
Me
this
too.
movie.
It's just like why do we need to know the history of the Army Rangers to make this movie better?
I don't know because all you need is him in his uniform, and you just know he's in the military. You don't really
Right.
need more than
And
that.
beyond that, it never really comes up again.
No, other than like he's trained.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So after that, we get Nick Cameron Poe going to go meet his wife, I think she is at this point,
Hmm.
uh, at her job. But for some reason, he only can arrive by boat. Did you notice that?
I don't know if he could only arrive by boat. He did arrive by boat. I
But
don't
in
know.
full military uniform, he arrived by boat. But
Maybe it
not
was a
like a
ferry.
military boat. It
No,
was like a guy with like a small like fishing boat that he arrived to this bar or
I don't
diner
know.
or whatever it is.
I don't even know where this is supposed to take place.
I assume somewhere in the South,
Just
because
because of
that's
his
where he's
accent,
from. Well, yeah,
but
probably.
he's
I
a
mean, that's,
military guy, so that he could have moved all over.
but the other people in there have accents too.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah.
All
So, I
right.
mean, but it's just a weird, is it like on a bayou and they really just wanted to nail the,
Yep.
like the how southern this person is?
Oh man.
So he goes into this bar. Is it a bar, a diner? I don't know. It's a bar where they serve
It's like a
food or
it's like
something
a
like
bar and
that.
grill.
Yeah.
You
He
know.
goes in there to meet his significant other who's pregnant uh with their child. And it's far enough that they know it's a girl because he
Right.
makes a comment about it. But she has literally no she's very skinny woman, young skinny woman, and does not show at all, despite the fact that they know what gender the baby is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And look, we're not doctors here, but as a parent, I don't think you can know that early unless you're just guessing and
I
you
was
it's a
relying on you
50-50
for that one
shot.
because you at least have a kid. I don't, so I
No,
don't know how that works.
we
But
didn't
that's
we didn't know that early on.
yeah, I feel like that's not like I'm talking there's like zero bump. Her stomach is flat. Like
Yeah.
very like yeah,
We never actually see her looking
right.
physically pregnant
Pregnant,
in the
yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Even though
Mhm.
she's well into the pregnancy at this point.
Right.
And there's a couple guys at the bar that are regulars because she comments that they're regulars. And they decide that this day, when her military husband comes back, that's when these guys are gonna really like hit on her a lot and like, be really rude about it. This is the day. And then they proceed to blame losing Vietnam on Nick Cage's character specifically.
Specifically, who like I guess maybe he fought in the Gulf War, but I don't think he would have fought in Vietnam.
Yeah, they say something like it's because of pussies like you that we lost Vietnam or something like that.
Yeah, this whole bit doesn't really make a lot of sense because to our earlier point about how far along his wife is, like he would have had to have been home 2, 3, 4 months ago,
Yeah, and
right?
he's been gone deployed for a while.
Theoretically, I mean, I guess we don't really know how long he's been gone, but yeah, so like he lives there then. So they come here all the time. They know him, they know her. It is weird. It doesn't really work. I think it would have been better if it was just they just got jumped by some random people in the parking lot.
Probably like a Batman situation.
You know, well, I think it would have like if they get to do their dancing, which bingo card.
Yeah,
But yeah,
true.
they get to do their dancing. Maybe they have dinner. We get to know them as a couple a little bit more, and then when they're walking out to their car, they get jumped by randos. I think that at least works better narratively for me.
I think it would have worked the same. I think, in watching this movie with the intent to review it and notate things, it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny at all.
No,
None of the story really does. And,
very little.
you heard the reports that like John Malkovich said his character would be rewritten every day on set.
Yeah, the script
Um,
wasn't done.
and so, things like this start to show those cracks. You know,
Well, there
and,
are certain things in this movie that feel like it was running short, like the runtime was short, and they had to
and they
just
just
kind
had to
of like,
pad it out,
yeah, they had to come up with stuff.
which is crazy because it was like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's nearly 2 hours. It's absolutely true. I forget exactly its runtime.
And it does
Yeah,
feel like that.
155. Yeah.
I feel like they could have effectively ended the movie when they get to the second landing strip instead of going all the way to Vegas. They could have like had
It
that be the final.
the boneyard. Yeah, it could have
Yeah.
ended in the boneyard. It could have ended when the plane crashes,
Yes. I mean,
right?
there's a lot of fluff in here, and you know what? The same thing was true of a lot of those '80s action movies. So,
Yeah.
I get it. Um, Yeah, and so these guys in the bar just really, really want to fight this army guy. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but like literally, it's pouring out rain. It
Hmm.
was clear when Nick Cage got dropped off, whenever he got dropped off on the boat. But then when he goes to leave, it's pouring. It's like a downpour, and these guys are waiting outside of a fence in the rain just for Nick Cage to show up with his girlfriend so that they can hurl some insults at him and fight him.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so he fights them, and spoiler alert, he kills one of them. And you won't guess what technique he uses to kill him, but the technique that you always heard about in fifth grade when people would talk about, oh my God, did you know you can palm somebody's nose bone into their brain and kill them? Not a real thing. And also, that is in this movie a real thing, and that is how he kills one of the guys.
Uh-huh.
With an upward palm strike into the nose.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah. So, so he kills the guy and he's just standing there in the rain.
Now, there is one thing I should probably have looked up, but like, okay, so he's a military guy, so he doesn't get the self-defense claim because he's trained.
Okay, so this is my next note,
Okay.
which is complete nonsense. That because he has training, this is something the judge in the
Yeah.
movie says that because he has training that he is subject to a whole different set of laws than a normal person. Now, one, that's not true, but two, where could one find this set of laws? Because I feel like the laws that we're all agreeing to, withhold or uphold or whatever, they are published where you can find them. But if you have training, you don't get like another law book sent to you in the mail that's like, hey, these are your new laws now. Please follow them.
It also just logically doesn't make any sense. So what? So because he knows what he's doing, he just has to let himself get beat up? Seems kind of to defeat the purpose of being trained, but
Yeah, I mean, I would
whatever.
think most people with maybe not with military training, but in general martial arts training would their first instinct would be to just leave the situation. That's what the training is. You're not training to fight, you're training
Right.
to get away from the situation.
And his wife's trying to get him to get back in the car, but he's supposedly also drunk, which is good because he's about to drive his pregnant wife around in the rain.
Well, she also
But
mentions when they're in the bar, there is a line where she says something like, I think I saw the old Cameron Pack, and
yeah,
I was hoping that he'd be gone when you came out back from the military. So he clearly has some sort of temper issues.
right.
Um,
It's barely touched on, but
but
it's
it
in
is
there.
mentioned, so at
Yeah.
least that part is covered.
Hmm.
But yeah, he kills the guy, and then we see him getting subjected to the second set of laws in this country that only applies to people who know how to do the nose bone to the brain technique.
Well, and then I guess his lawyer. So I would think you could appeal this for bad counsel because his lawyer convinces him to take a plea deal that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, that's bonkers.
Yeah. I want to see one of the lawyers on there's those YouTube lawyers that like
Okay,
will review movies and stuff like that.
that would
I
be
want to see
fun.
them do that.
Yeah.
Although I don't think there's enough of a courtroom scene here for them to really do much with it, but it would be funny. But then we get like the montage of him in jail doing various exercises with and without a shirt, and also the voiceover,
Da-da-da-da-da.
which is on our bingo card.
Yeah.
With a flawless, I'm going to just say flawless Southern accent. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say
Alabama.
completely flawless. I think he was talking to the same kid that Tom Hanks did for
Yeah,
Forrest Gump.
that's Bubba.
And that was the guy he was like, I'm going to do this accent. But then Forrest Gump, then Tom Hanks actually was able to do a good job with that accent. And Nick was able to not do as great of a job. I
Well,
love
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, it is iconic for this movie, but
yeah,
you're not ever really gonna hear a Southern person that sounds like that.
probably not.
I
But
would
Tom Hanks has
say
also like
definitely not.
made a career out of those types of roles, though.
I'm not comparing the
Yeah.
two. I'm just
Oh,
saying that
oh,
one of them that he was more successful.
gotcha.
You
Okay,
know,
yeah,
Nick isn't really known for his voice acting or like his ability to do accents. In fact, I would say quite the opposite.
but he does them quite
He
frequently.
does them, and it's almost always a point that is criticized about the movie,
Yeah, that's fair.
for better for worse.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that I did count this accent for weird accents for the bingo card.
I did.
Yeah, we got shirtless handstand push-ups, which was fun. Um, and so then it's been 8 years or 7 years or whatever, and this
Hmm.
he's about to get released, and they show him like his box of stuff that he's taking with him, and he has the bunny from the movie,
Right.
which where did he get that?
Well, so he got it at the prison store, the
The
shop.
gift stop, the gift store they have at the prison.
Well, they have a store at the
They have
prison
a
where,
commissary
yeah,
where you
but
can order food, but they don't keep gifts.
maybe they have things for people who are getting out to bring to their. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea.
I'm pretty sure that's not a thing,
I don't
but
know. I mean,
it was a little weird. But I
I
mean,
wouldn't. I don't
yes.
know. I don't even know how to look that up. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, I'm gonna say I've watched a lot of 60 Days In and like jail shows. I've never seen anybody that was able to get a stuffed animal with
Maybe
their
it's a '90s
commissary.
thing. Maybe it's not around anymore.
Okay. But yes, that part was a little hard to believe that you could just get this bunny delivered. Um, we get our first shot of Cusack,
Hmm.
and he's wearing socks with sandals,
Yeah,
and they make sure to show that. So
several
clearly, they
times.
felt that was important to his character. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that's the same footwear he's wearing throughout the whole movie.
Yes, it absolutely is. Well, because Colm Meaney's character has to hate John Cusack's character, right? And they're supposed to be kind of like opposites, diametrically opposed type people. So I think the wicker sandals with the socks was supposed to be part of that, free lovey dovey, everyone's, capable of good mentality that Cusack's character has.
Sure. Yeah, and apparently socks with sandals is an important establishing uh character thing.
I
So
don't know.
we get to
You'll
see
have to
that.
ask Agent Larkin. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. He won't. Funny thing, I heard a rumor that he would not like if you bring this movie up to him during interviews and stuff, he will not talk about it.
Yeah, from what
But
I've
then he
gathered,
also said he would do a sequel. Like he said that like 10 years ago or something.
well, because I think from what I've gathered from this is everybody, not everybody, that's not fair. The majority of people who did this movie had a bad time and they did it for the money. The movie had a $75 million budget, which back then was quite a bit. And I think if they were going to do another one, John Cusack would get paid pretty well for it. And he would probably anticipate it being a slightly different experience, 25 years later, 30 years, closing in on 30 years later.
I mean, I would hope it would be a different
Yeah.
experience.
So I mean
But
that look, if someone's like, "Hey, do you want to come back for a sequel of Con Air for $10 million?" Probably,
right.
you know.
Yeah. So when this is our first kind of establishing section for the agents in this movie and like the government agencies.
The
And so
Marshalls.
yeah, well, not all of them are marshals.
Right,
John
yeah.
Cusack's character is a marshal.
Hmm.
And it's his plane. The U.S. Marshals are in charge of transporting prisoners, I guess. And then,
Supposedly that's true. That part, that and the
fair
plane
enough.
thing are
I don't
those are
know enough
real.
about it.
Yeah.
But then Agent Duncan Malloy, which is Colm Meaney's character, is DEA.
Right.
And the DEA is trying to get dirt on one of the on another criminal, and they're trying to like put a plant on the plane to talk to this other guy that's on the plane that knows the person they're trying to get information about.
Right.
Kind of a complicated plan, but we find out that there's no guns allowed on the plane except for like the 12 guns that are on the plane. They make a point, and they're like, they want to give a gun to the DEA agent that's undercover, and they're like, no, there's no guns allowed on the plane. That's the rule. And then he's like, well, what if he just put it in his ankle? He's like, no, there's no guns allowed. The only guns allowed are there's one in the cockpit that's under lock and key, and then an entire armory in the underneath the plane. But other than that, there's no guns allowed on the plane. And it's just
Yeah.
super ridiculous.
I mean, it clearly is supposed to be the none of the guards are armed.
Right.
But my question would be, what is the scenario that the arsenal is for?
Yeah, are they just going to have like a bunch of guards go down below to grab a bunch of shotguns?
To do what? Because
I
like
don't
I would
know.
imagine by the time they know they need them, it's too late,
Right.
right? So unless of course like the idea is that the plane's like sectioned off into like three different sections or whatever. Maybe this is a very like this is the Titanic where they didn't think there was any way that all three sections would be breached,
Right.
right? And they were.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know, but it was ridiculous because they kept saying there's no guns allowed on my plane, but we see a lot of guns that come off that plane.
Well, and
Uh,
it's used later against them that that's how the guy dies, but the truth is he was dead either way, whether he had
yeah,
that
and
gun or
also
not.
that gun didn't really make any difference in the end, like
None.
for the whole movie.
It makes no difference. It just extends his life 2 minutes.
Right. Um, there we get some casual discrimination throughout the movie. Lots of
Yeah.
the word Negro is used a lot,
A lot.
which
Yeah.
is weird. Just because even in, I mean, we both lived through the late 90s, and I don't recall hearing that word that much in movies or just in general life.
Not me. I mean, to be fair, I didn't really grow up in a lot of like, you know, I don't know. I grew up in a very white area, to be
Sure, but it
fair.
wasn't just black guys
So
saying that word in this movie. It was white guys too. The guard says it a couple of times.
but he says it to black guys, right?
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
He
So I
does.
think like here, like I think that just didn't there were not many black people here when I grew up for for the worst, right? Like there just weren't we're not a diverse neighborhood. And there's so who would you have said it to, I think is the thing.
Maybe.
Which is
But
not,
even you watched a lot
its
of
own
movies
problem.
that probably had black people in them, and
Yeah, I mean unless it unless it was a Tarantino thing, it
right.
wasn't really coming up.
Which hopefully you weren't watching a lot of those as a child, but we're not going to
Yeah,
get into
no
that.
comment.
But yeah, we got the casual discrimination as a thing on our bingo card, so
Right.
that definitely got hit.
Hmm.
And so I'm led to my next problem with this movie.
Okay.
Why is Cameron Poe even on this flight? I mean, I
Yeah.
understand in the movie context
Right.
why, but if you think about it outside of the movie, like just in general, we're gonna move 20 guys that are all like rapists, murderers, people that have killed 30 people, that have raped 24 women, stuff like that. And then we're gonna throw this guy that killed a person in self-defense on this plane with him, he's a free man, but
Hmm.
he just needs a ride to
Well, and his diabetic
wherever.
buddy, who we don't know why
We don't
he's
know
in
what his crime
jail,
is there. Yeah.
but he seems fine.
Yeah, they mentioned that he's moving to a different prison.
Right.
And so
Which
they just happen to be going to the same place. His cellmate and him. It just doesn't make any sense that they would put this person on this flight.
no, it really, really doesn't. And maybe that's common. Maybe it's a way they think they're saving money or something because what do they care if, but it is odd.
Yeah. So they're doing like pat downs on all the prisoners as they send them in. And the DEA, the head DEA guy is like, I'll pat this guy down. And it was his DEA plant. And so he snuck a gun into his guy's sock when he was patting him down, and somehow no one noticed this, but
I mean,
snuck it into his sock.
it's so terribly handled,
Yeah.
right? Across the board. Like there's no like you're not using metal detectors on these guys as they get into the
No, it's just
plane
a plain. Yeah.
or
Because I mean, we find out later that a couple of the inmates have stuck like needles, like sewing needles
Mhm.
into their skin.
Yeah, yeah, and like I mean, Dave Chappelle's characters swallowed the lighter fluid, right? And the DEA guy's got like the recorder that's like this massive metal tin that he's
Yeah,
got. There's so like I don't know, the whole thing just to me seems like incompetence.
big time.
Like this is the second half of the 90s. It's not like this was like a movie that took place in the 50s or something like that. Like we
Right,
had
where there was no technology. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Um, so they take off, and the plan is set in motion by Dave Chappelle lighting another prisoner on fire after making some mildly racist
Oh, definitely
remarks about a
racist.
Native American
Yeah.
prisoner that's next to him. But yeah, he like uses fishing line that he had in his mouth to pull a condom up from his stomach that had a light
So
or
gross.
had a match, just one match, and a small little thing of lighter fluid. And it's unclear how he got that in jail,
It's a
but
very disgusting scene. I don't like that kind of stuff.
yeah, he pulls it out of his mouth and then he lights the guy next to him on fire.
Hmm.
And when that happens, they open all the like barriers in the plane, and he like runs all the way to the back like he's panicking and releases a bunch of the like guys that are in the really secure holding facilities.
So here would be my big question, and this is one of my biggest problems with the movie. If you have levers that release the individual cages that you only really have four of for the most dangerous people on the planet, why wouldn't those have a lock attached to them of
Yeah,
some
or
kind?
some sort of extra layer of security
Yeah,
rather than
a,
just being a lever.
a cage, a key,
A
something,
handprint,
right?
biometrics, yeah,
I don't
something
know,
like
a pin number, anything where a person walking by can't just grab it.
yeah, because they show later on when Steve Buscemi's character comes out, they have to have two keys put in at the same time on the truck and
Hmm.
turned at the same time to unlock him from the truck.
Who, by the way, like he can't. His face is all covered. He can't use his hands. He can't even like barely stand up on his own. Why aren't the other dudes like that?
Right. Yeah, because they wanted him to be scarier.
But
But
here's
yeah,
the thing: after they seat him down in just a regular seat, though, so he's so dangerous that he has to be in the most sophisticated truck, but he's
well, no,
fine on the airplane.
no, they put him in a cell.
Not Steve Buscemi's character.
Yes, they do. And then Cyrus
Oh,
releases him
yeah,
after
I'm
they
thinking
take
later
off.
later in the movie. He sorry,
He is
sorry,
sitting
sorry.
in there,
No,
but
you're
yeah, that's
right.
because Cyrus lets him out.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so at this
Ving
point,
Rhames has to let him out. Yeah, I remember now.
Cyrus the virus uh is loose and has taken over the plane. When the like panic starts happening, the co-pilot grabs the gun out of their locked case and goes out to the cabin, and Cyrus is immediately waiting there and bashes him and takes the gun after killing like three or four people. Um, yeah, so now all that's all it took, and now the prisoners are in control. And we
It
find out.
it's bonkers to me that the pilots are trained to do it the way they do it.
I would assume that they weren't trained in this circumstance. So we find
Well,
out at this point Danny Trejo's character is a rapist that is called something
yeah,
23. I can't remember.
Johnny.
And
Johnny's really cool.
that 23 is for the number of women that he's raped, and he has like tattoos on his arm for each woman that he's raped. And he said that if they really knew about him, that he would be called Johnny 300.
Yeah, and then John Malkovich jokes that that's not as catchy. But yeah, so Trejo like really didn't like this character and more or less refused to do any role like it ever again.
It wasn't just this role, but this role was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, because a
Right.
lot of the roles he was being cast for were like gang member,
Hmm.
murdering rapists and stuff like that. Yeah, and it was, having known more about him now over the years and having seen him in much different roles, this seeing him back in a role like this is kind of jarring.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's fair. He's
It
also
was
so
normal for
young.
him back
Right.
then,
Right.
but yeah, but now, with hindsight,
Hmm.
it's definitely jarring to see him in a role like this. Um, yeah, we get more discrimination. I think Cyrus calls somebody a Negro crackhead. I think maybe Dave Chappelle's character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we start to get some the U.S. agents start to figure out that something might be going on with this plane because they find a fake brick in Cyrus's jail cell that has a bunch of like blueprints behind it, blueprints for the plane and like just a bunch of random stuff that seems like suspicious.
Hmm.
My question is, one, they show that they have a camera in his cell, and it's pretty much pointed right at this place that John Malkovich was allegedly doing all this.
Hmm.
How did no one catch this? Also, did John Malkovich have to create a new fake brick every time he wanted to work on this little area or like read his blueprints?
So here are my only possible explanations.
I can't wait.
One, he did it at night and they don't have night vision cameras for some reason because they don't have metal detectors for the plane either.
Okay.
So that's okay. Then I think that's not where he kept the stuff before. I think he put it all there after the plan was set in motion because of the bomb. And he put it there to get people to investigate and blow themselves up.
So he was expecting them to find a false brick that he had disguised to look exactly like the wall. I don't know.
I
That
guess
seems
he
like a
figured
lot.
I guess he figured that he wanted to hide the evidence in the hopes that maybe it wasn't found because that would make things easier for him, right? But if they do find it, he's going to make it difficult for them and then also try and blow them up.
Yeah, so they're going through all this stuff, and John Cusack's character is like, "Don't touch anything. I'll be right back." And then, of course, one of the other guys in the cell immediately starts touching stuff, and it's a bomb and blows everything up. So all the evidence
Yeah,
is gone.
I'd love to know, like, so they were able to get lighter fluid, they were able to get chemicals for quite a large explosion and powerful explosion. I mean, it destroys a steel door,
Yeah,
like, so I don't know how they got all this stuff, but
it's a really bad jail apparently. So they land at this airfield where they're
Carson
doing,
City.
yeah, Carson City. They're doing a prisoner swap. Some of the prisoners are getting off here, and some prisoners are getting put on back onto the plane. And this is where Steve Buscemi's character comes in,
Hmm.
and then we get the new pilot for the plane because they killed some of the guys that were supposed to get off the plane, so they had to swap out with other white guys on the plane. And the pilot, I guess, was one of them. And so they had a guy that had been studying, Cyrus had been communicating with this guy that had been studying how to fly this plane. And he also studied how to remove the transponder, apparently.
Yeah, I'd love to know how they were communicating this to each other,
I mean, that's a real question that you should
right?
have. Yeah.
Like, because, prison mail is screened. Mail coming in, mail going out, it's all screened. So they would have had to have been writing each other in some type of code or have informed each other of some type of secret, like,
But
invisible
to be
ink or
fair, they
something.
did kind of show that they were capable of communicating in code because of the stuff that was in Cyrus's cell.
Totally. I just don't know how they told each other how to do that.
I don't know, but there was at least something established there that shows they know how to use code, I guess. So, it
Because
wasn't
what
completely out of left
the
field.
thing that makes it well, it's what makes this difficult is none of these people have a reason to like we're never told why they know each other, other than the fact that they're criminals. But it's not like they were from some gang and they all got busted at different points, or they were a unit that worked together at some point. It's just these are all bad guys, so they just inherently know each other.
I guess, yeah.
Okay.
There was also a lot of nicknames in this that I feel like
Jesus.
there's
So
not.
many.
So, can you think of any criminals where they have a nickname in the past like 20 years?
I mean, to be fair, I don't think I really know any personally. Maybe that's just a common thing in prison.
I mean, oh, so you think these are all just prison nicknames? They weren't actually given. These weren't like. I assumed that they were the names that like the media gave them.
Yeah, I would imagine that most of them are prison nicknames, right?
Gotcha.
Like, I can't imagine that like the press gave Dave Chappelle's character the name Pinball.
Or called the dude Swamp Thing.
Right. Like I think those are prison names. Now, maybe Cyrus the Virus and maybe Diamond Dog, maybe those were self-proclaimed names because remember Diamond Dog's like he's a writer and he wrote this whole manifesto and stuff. Maybe those were self-proclaimed names as the leaders of these people, but I think the rest were probably just like
Well, the Marietta
nicknames.
Mangler was definitely a media name. That was
That
Garland
one,
Green.
yeah, but he's supposed to be like a Jeffrey Dahmer type serial
Right.
killer,
True.
right? Of lore, whereas these other guys are just bad guys.
Yeah. So while they're doing this prisoner transfer and everything, they Dave Chappelle's character Pinball is tasked with taking the transponder off the plane and getting rid of it. And so he decides to go put it on this other like tour plane that's on the same airfield that does like airplane tours.
Which I
And,
guess they were extremely lucky that this plane was leaving at the exact same time their plane was leaving.
yeah, that's very lucky. And he also gets caught, but then he just like charms his way out of it by like hitting on the worker that catches him.
Yeah.
And at this point, you think he got left behind, but turns out he didn't.
Nope. He'll be
They'll
back.
find him later. Yeah. Um, so free Buscemi. I don't know why I have that in there
Because they freed
because they let him loose. I
they let
think
him
there's this
loose.
scene with Diamond Dog being scared of him.
Yeah, he's really nervous because like this dude's like almost like mythical, right? In a
Right.
way. So everybody's kind of scared of him.
Yeah.
And his whole,
It,
I mean, his whole story is so weird. I love Steve Buscemi. I think he's a phenomenal actor. This is such a weird character.
it's a weird role. Yeah. Um, so my favorite line in the movie, uh, we get John Malkovich, Cameron Poe's like going up to John Malkovich, and John Malkovich says something like, "Yeehaw, what do you want?" or something like that to him, and he asked him what he's thinking or something, and Nick Cage's character goes, "What was I thinking? Oh yeah, yeehaw, that's right." And it's just such a ridiculous line. Like I don't I don't give a lot of credit to the writing in this movie, but that line and the way Nick delivers it is so fucking hilarious every time. Every time. 'Cause it's just such a smart ass response.
Mhm.
I love it.
Well,
Um
because like that's he's talking to Diamond Dog, I think, at that point. Like there's such a
yeah,
weird relationship going on between Poe, the virus, and Diamond Dog, where they kind of they all like they're trusting Poe, but they don't even know the guy,
right. They're just going off what he's saying as the truth.
even though they're all from the same prison, but I guess not the same prison block because we found out Billy Bedlam, is like, well, I've never seen you,
Yeah,
or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It the relationships are very strange in this movie.
extremely. And he's lied to them and told them that he has another 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lie that's going on through this whole movie that eventually gets figured out. But yeah, so they send out a bunch of attack choppers because
Yeah.
they figure out that this is going on and that the plane has been compromised. And of course, the asshole DEA guy is like, "We're gonna shoot this thing down," and so they take out like three attack choppers. Uh, and they're gonna go try and shoot this down, but they're using the transponder, so they're following the tour plane.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vince Larkin, John Cusack's character, has cracked the code that was in the cell,
And knows that they're going
and
to.
knows that they're going to, yeah, a different airstrip.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tries to tell Duncan Malloy that they're going somewhere else to stop tracking the transponder, blah blah blah. And of course they don't listen. So Larkin goes, "I need a chopper," to the people that are apparently the chopper people. And they're like, "Oh, we're fresh out. We're fresh out of choppers." They say something almost exactly like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, you could get there really quickly, or you could get there in like an hour if you drive really fast." And Colm Meaney's character has had showed up earlier in like a vintage sports car,
Yeah.
and so
Corvette 67.
yeah, old Stingray. So he decides to steal this and drive to this other landing pad or landing zone.
Which is great.
Sure, yeah, it
Yeah.
was great, and he's
I
in
love
his
that
socks and
car.
sandals.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Well, I'm a fan of classic muscle cars. I particularly really like the C2 and C3 vets, but yeah.
yeah, it's a nice car. So on the plane, uh, Billy Bedlam, the murderer, has gone down below and is looking through.
Well,
He
we skipped a part.
well, we're at that part. We've gone down. He go down with
He
Nick
goes down with
Cage
he goes down
because
with Diamond Dog first,
oh, that's right. It's because they need to free up the
the
landing
landing gear.
gear.
And that's where we
And
find Pinball.
yeah, Pinball tried to get back on through the landing gear and died, which crazy enough is a thing that's actually happened recently
Oh,
a
really?
bunch of times. Yeah, I've actually there's been news about it multiple times in the last month
I
about
missed those.
people
Jeez.
dying in landing gear trying to get on a plane.
That's gotta be a
Apparently, they
bad
don't
way to
realize
go.
that it's really cold and you aren't going to make it. But yeah, they have to free this body so that they can get the landing gear back up so that they aren't moving so slow because they're on a strict schedule.
But as luck would have it, he's got a Sharpie.
Yes, in his pocket. And so he writes a message saying like US Agent Larkin and then the location of the next stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, he throws that, out and it lands on some guy's car. The guy's like, "Oh, these birds, I just waxed my car and these birds already shit on the windshield." And he starts wiping it off, and then this dead body just demolishes his Volvo.
Uh,
Yeah, it was very like not like the scene did not connect with the rest of the movie very
Not at
well,
all. Even the
but
music,
it was
it's
hilarious.
yeah, it does feel like totally separate.
Yeah. And
But
so
yeah.
they also Larkin has picked up his wife, Cameron Poe's wife and daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and told them he's not going to be there to meet you. We need to take you someplace. And so they go and meet up with him. And I wouldn't think that this would be like a standard operating procedure for this, but yeah, he has like a full on conversation with him because he thinks there might be an ally on this plane. Uh,
Well, because it doesn't make any. Why would a guy who's about to be paroled for a self-defense crime, right, uh, risk being back in prison?
but
Is the thought
what
process.
information would his wife have?
Well, because he assumes that they've met and talked and written to each other or whatever,
And they
and
have, but he didn't. Nobody knew that this plane was going to be taken over. So,
I think what he was trying to get is confirmation whether or not he was, if Poe was worried about coming back to the civilian world. right? Because
Fair
there
enough.
are some people who struggle with that, right? Whether that's leaving the military or leaving prison, they struggle coming back to civilian society, right? And having, regular jobs and having to go grocery shopping, and things like that is a very weird disconnect for some people in those situations. So I think he was trying to rule that out.
Fair enough. That works. So then we get the scene with Billy Bedlam in the belly of the plane, going through personal items that are down there, and Cameron Poe sees him go down there and follows him down there, thinking that because this guy's kind of been kind of against him this
Mm-hmm.
whole time, so he kind of thinks maybe something will, happen. And so he goes down there, and Billy Bedlam is reading a letter from his daughter saying that he's about to be free, and he is playing with the bunny, apparently. And that's when we get the famous line, put
The
the bunny
best
back
line
in
in the
the
movie:
box. Not the best line in the movie, but
"Put
probably the
the
most
bunny
iconic
back in the
line.
box."
Yeah, and he warns him a couple of times, but doesn't listen, and so they have a little kerfuffle in the belly of the plane, and it ends with the guy being impaled on a pipe.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't you put the bunny back in the box?
And so then he goes back upstairs, and Steve Buscemi's character can tell that something has just happened. He says something like, two men go down, only one comes back up, or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells the story about how he killed this girl and he wore her head as a hat for 3 states or something.
Yeah, dark
And
shit.
that it's very dark, but also like, what are the logistics of this? I mean, a head, the average human head is what, 8 pounds or something like that?
Do you want to know how he physically accomplished it?
Yes.
I think he may have been like a little facetious.
How have you ever? I know you're a hat guy. Have you ever worn a hat that weighs 8 pounds?
No, no, I haven't. But I,
That's what I'm saying. Like, did he like
I doubt it. I doubt
strap
he
it to
was
the top of his
balancing
head?
an entire head on top of his head.
Did he like tie rope to the ears and then like do go like a chin strap with it or something?
I mean, I don't know. I kind
Did
of
he
was.
like remove the skull and like just have the skin and he like wore the skin as a hat or something?
You're asking the wrong guy.
I'm just saying, like, logistically, this is a guy that everything that we've seen or heard about him is that he's very like well thought out. Like everything he's done has been planned. He's not stupid. He's a smart guy. So I'm sure he didn't just like grab a head and put it on top of his head and wear it
I
through multiple
agree.
states.
Yeah, I don't think that's what happened either.
So I think I just need clarification on how you wear a head as a hat
I
for
mean,
that
maybe he
long.
scalped her or something.
Maybe, but then you're not really wearing the head as a hat. You're just wearing the like patch
Yeah,
of
I don't
hair.
think you can wear a full head that's intact as a hat. I don't think that that works. I think
Yeah.
there's more to it than that.
It's just a weird line. There's other dark things that you could have said or things that would have made more sense if somebody put any thought into it.
I mean,
But
most of his lines are pretty
true.
rude.
True. And then we get finally the tank top Cage reveal,
Oh yeah.
where he takes off his shirt. And this whole time we've kind of glossed over it because it's not as big of a point of the movie as it should be, but his cellmate was diabetic and they've been trying to get him insulin this whole time. That's why he
And
stayed on the plane.
for the female guard who ever Johnny 23 wants to assault.
Yeah,
Um
sexually assault. Yeah.
so he's trying to protect the two of them, right? That's why he didn't get off, right? Because there's all these questions about why would he stay on the plane, and
Yeah.
he's trying to protect these two people.
Yeah. And so they land and they kind of wreck the plane a little bit and get it buried in the dirt. Um, but they're getting ready to the Ving Rhames' character is getting ready to execute all the guards from the plane,
Mm-hmm.
and Cameron Poe stops that. He tells them that we need to hold him as ransom or whatever, and Cyrus the Virus agrees. So now Ving Rhames' character hates him even more.
Yeah, I mean, well, Cyrus agrees with Poe basically every time until he's caught.
Yeah,
Right. And Diamond Dog's a little frustrated by that, I think. But I also think Diamond Dog is just kind of biding his time because he intends to betray Cyrus when the opportunity arises.
right.
Right.
So also at this point, Steve Buscemi's character has gotten off the plane and has just walked to what is apparently a trailer park that's right
In the
next
desert
door
somewhere.
in the middle of the desert where they say there's nothing within like 30 minutes or something like that. There's apparently a trailer park
Hmm.
that is inhabited by families,
Hmm.
and they didn't think it was weird that this plane just kind of wrecked, or nobody saw anything out of the ordinary happening.
I mean, we never see an adult from that town or little area. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, there are times when I think about it that I'm like, I don't know that those like that happened.
I was going to bring that up. There are theories that that girl is not real.
Right? I don't think she is.
The only reason why I would say that that is not true, and that it was, or at least it wasn't intended to be that way, is because you see it specifically shows the girl waving
At
when
the
they
plane.
leave,
That
which
breaks
you
it.
could say that if Steve Buscemi's character is looking out the window, then they see that, but
He's not.
no.
No, that does break it, but everything other than that shot makes it seem like that's not really happening. And
Yeah,
so,
it's a weird scene altogether.
right? So like it almost makes more sense that the waving is a mistake than the scene is real. I think that makes even less sense if the scene is real.
Yeah, we'll get into that scene more in a minute, but yeah, it's a weird scene. Um, we get the quote "Hooray for the sound of fucking silence" when they attach the silencer onto the gun, which is a very like 80s, catchphrase type thing.
Well, because Poe's running around this junkyard trying to find a needle that I guess is going to be sterile somewhere
Yeah, a
in this
syringe.
junkyard. Uh, well, and it has to be a needle.
Yeah, a syringe for injecting insulin is
Yeah,
what. Yeah, a syringe with a needle. Yes,
yeah,
I'm just like, yeah, that's what he's looking for. Not
right.
like because they did use needles to escape
Oh,
from
oh,
stuff
sorry,
earlier. So I
sorry.
was
Yeah,
just trying
yeah.
to be specific. Yeah,
Sorry.
and so while he's looking for that, he runs into this building where there's another plane, the plane that they're supposed to be switching to, but
Hmm.
there's a betrayal happening there. Anyway, when
Right.
he gets in there, he gets a gun pulled on him by the people that were waiting for another prisoner to join them, and they threaten, or they say he says something like, "If you fire that gun, then you're gonna have 20 angry prisoners coming in here," or something like that. And then they screw a silencer on, and he says, "Well, hooray for the sound of fucking silence."
Well, because that's every action movie's answer to anything is just throw a silencer on it and then nobody can hear anything.
Yeah, which again, I brought this up on other podcasts. That's not how they're not called silencers, first of all. They're called suppressors, and that's not how they work. But anyway, I digress.
But when I
Um,
play the GoldenEye video game on the Nintendo 64, no one can hear me when I use the silenced PP7.
yes, and that's exactly what real life is like. So yeah, then we get a scene of Steve Buscemi's character again with this little girl that he met at this trailer park.
Hmm.
And they're playing doll, like with a doll. He's got a doll, her doll, presumably in his hand.
They're
And
in like an empty in-ground pool.
yeah, like everything is destroyed, broken. It looks
Right.
post-apocalyptic.
Yeah,
But this
she's
girl is
very dirty and
she's
unkempt.
dressed and like she clearly isn't well taken care of, but
Hmm.
she's happy and she just wants to sing. She wants to sing a song with Steve Buscemi's character.
Right.
It's a very weird scene. Again, because like we covered, you don't know whether it really happened or not. And you don't really get closure for it in the moment. It just shows
Right.
him walking away later with the doll,
And we're
and you
supposed to
assume
assume
that he
bad,
murdered her.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, or
bad
did
stuff
whatever.
happened.
Yeah. Um, but then it would have been better to leave it open ended like that, I think. But then you see her waving at the plane later. Anyway, um,
Well, I think that's supposed to lead into the end of his character, right? And what we're
when he's
supposed to
free.
think. Yeah. Right. Because
Um,
he ends up just like gambling in Vegas.
yeah, being free. It's a
Yeah.
weird choice. But then we get the Sai and Nara line.
God.
Like, okay, when I talk about writing and enjoying writing of movies, it's usually because it feels like it could be realistic dialogue. It's something you can relate to. Keep in mind the villain of this movie is named Cyrus,
Hmm.
and this character is getting ready to get killed, and he says "sigh," and immediately before it can even like a normal human can process that this person, he was getting ready to say Cyrus, but he stopped. It stops at "sigh," and in the middle of that, Cyrus says "Anara," like he's been planning this the whole time.
The only thing
It's
that
a
makes
good
sense.
line, but
Oh, I don't know about that. It's
I, I it's a funny like
it's funny.
action here or like action movie line, but it doesn't really work because of how fast you would have to be on that.
Well, I think he wasn't gonna say Cyrus. I think he was just saying Psy, like they're buddies, right? Like if I were to call you Rye, or you called
Yeah,
me Dare, right? I think like that's what was happening. But you're right. I mean, it's silly.
it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at this point they notice that that they have company. Like it looks like some sort of police or federal agents or something are coming down this road that they can see from like miles away. Um down and this road runs through what is essentially the choke point from 300, but somehow
These are military, DEA, US Marshals, police, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna just drive through this
yeah
valley of
this
death.
yeah it's literally like cars lining the side of the road that just is so there's only like one way in and one way out, and even the convicts kind of mention that
Hmm.
because they plan how to handle this because they see them and then they somehow have 12 minutes before they arrive, which is enough time to set up propane tanks as traps and kind of set everybody up around.
I'm very confused by this boneyard, they call it, because it's all trash, but all the propane tanks have propane in them, enough propane to run for
That was actually
several
my
minutes.
next note was good thing the propane tanks were full.
All of them are full, totally full, not a problem.
And also there's a salvage yard that's also an airstrip and there's a trailer park right next to it.
And like a little like diner shop that
Yeah.
I guess it's like a gas station that gets blown up that Nick has to, jump through or whatever. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean that's less hard to believe because if you've been to small airstrips before, there usually are like little food places or gas
But it
stations on
doesn't
them.
look active.
No, it does not.
The whole place looks like it hasn't been touched in 20 years.
But this isn't the only place where kind of the settings for the movie don't make sense for the actual setting that they're supposed to be in. We'll get into that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a very weird setup. But yeah, anyway, they go in there and they kill a bunch of the marshals and blow up the propane. And Larkin comes in with some sort of like bulldozer thing to save the day.
Yeah.
And they end up getting on the plane and taking off.
Well,
And
because Larkin's like running around in the background of all of this for like 10 minutes trying to
yeah,
like find a way to help or whatever. And there is a good scene between Cusack and Cage in the airplane hangar that is, I think it's a really good scene. I really like it. But no.
it's fine. I mean, I think it was meant to be like more emotional than it actually was. It's hard to go from like sayonara to that scene
Well,
to
it's
propane tank explosions. You
well,
know what I
they don't
mean?
happen in that order, but
You know what I'm saying, though. I was just saying, like, in the context of the like 10 minutes around it.
it is hard to have real moments in a movie like this
Yeah.
because the ridiculous stuff is very ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so the real moments don't quite land the way they
Resonate as
probably
much.
meant
Yeah.
to. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean they kill a bunch of the cops and stuff, and Larkin ends up getting this giant like bulldozer thing that they all use. But how do they dig? Okay, so they dig out this plane. This is a big freaking plane, right? It's like a cargo plane. They
Yeah.
dig out the plane, but didn't they destroy like the front gear when they crashed?
No.
Okay.
Obviously not, Derek.
Obviously not, because
The
they
propeller wasn't damaged, nothing was damaged.
everything was fine.
It was fine. They just needed to pull it out of some dirt.
And they take off
Yeah,
totally fine
no
with
problem.
no real problems.
So Cameron Poe, Nick Cage was able to get a syringe from the abandoned fire truck that
Yeah,
was in the salvage
totally.
yard, which is, a thing. And so he's able to get his buddy the insulin shot. And then immediately after, okay, so he gives him the insulin shot, and then they take off, and Sweet Home Alabama is playing, and people are dancing to it. And then
Which is the only thing I can ever think about when I hear that song, by the way.
and then Ving Rhames' character gets a hold of the piece of paper that talks about how this girl's daddy is coming home and everything else. And
Well, because
so,
he goes down below. I forget why he goes. Oh, he. I when they're getting the weapons out of the belly of the plane, the arsenal that's under the plane, Cyrus sees Bedlam dead.
yeah.
So they go down there afterwards to check it out.
Yeah, and he gives Cyrus the note, and Cyrus is trying to figure out who the note is. He has a feeling that he knows who it is, but
Well, Nick's got
keep
that deranged look in this
keep in
scene.
mind that Nick just got him the insulin shot, and this guy immediately is like, "It was me. That's my daughter." Blah blah blah, and then immediately gets shot in the stomach. So he goes from being like on the edge of dying to also now being on the edge of dying from a bullet wound. So he gets about 10 minutes of happiness in there.
He's had a rough day.
Yeah. And then we get the iconic scene of Nick Cage like walking to the front of the plane and getting shot in the arm, and it doesn't
It's
even like
great.
the physics are just like nothing happens. There's no recoil. It just takes
His
off a
arm
chunk of
goes
his
back a
arm.
little bit. His arm goes
It
back
just
a little
takes a
bit.
chunk of his arm off, and he just keeps marching forward.
Well, he's actually a Terminator. We don't get to know that in this
Apparently,
movie,
yeah.
but that was the idea for.
We did get some green screen flying
Uh-huh.
from when Agent Larkin. There was a lot of real stuff. Like there was a lot of real
Yeah.
helicopter shots and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But any of the times when it was outside of the helicopter and you could see the actor inside, it
Yeah.
was always green screen.
Yes.
So we
Mhm.
get some pretty bad green screen shots. Um, and so uh the they shoot the plane down essentially, don't they? Or is that what happens? Or
Well,
what?
no. So
They
so
get to
Lark
Vegas.
so Larkin's in one of the helicopters. Colm Meaney's character's in another one of the helicopters, and he wants to shoot down the plane.
Yeah.
And he does get some shots off, and they damage the plane. So like its engines are now damaged. So Swamp Thing is like, we're going down, and they want him to
And
get
he
to the
puts on
airport.
like 1960s Vietnam era military helmet that was in the cockpit for some reason.
I mean, unless he had it from prison, I don't,
I don't think they
but
let you
I don't
take
think
stuff like
so.
that into prison. It
I
was
don't
a
think so.
weird thing.
But yeah, so instead of making it to the airport, they're gonna have to land on the strip. At which point they go from now I know like if Vegas is very much like there's desert and then it's Vegas. Okay, like that's true. But they very much quickly go from we should shoot the plane down because there's nobody here to we're crashing on the
On
strip.
the strip, yeah.
Right.
We're literally in the middle of Vegas.
Now look, this is the trolley problem, I guess, but you've got maybe three good guys on this plane and then a bunch of bad guys. You're going to crash a plane on the Las Vegas Strip where there are thousands of civilians, tens of millions of dollars in vehicles, buildings, signage, whatever, infrastructure, right? And at that point, it would be hard to argue against just shooting the plane down. I'm just saying.
Apparently it's not a problem at all, actually.
I'd get it. I get it at that point.
So yeah, they crash into the Vegas Strip. And at this point, the U.S. Marshals have corralled most of the. It shows them like arresting a bunch of the guys.
It's
They've
quite a
corralled a
crash,
bunch of
though.
them. It's a big crash. Um, but then they go into the plane, and they had Nick Cage had caught Danny Trejo's character attempting to sexually assault one of the female guard on the plane, and so he had handcuffed him.
Yeah.
And so when they go in the plane, they find it was a really fun gag. They
Yeah.
find Danny Trejo's character still like handcuffed there, They're like, okay, get him out of here. And they take him out, but his arm is still left hanging there. I thought it could, but the way they framed it, you
It's
had no
great.
idea until they moved. So
No,
that was
it's
kind of
good.
a fun, that was kind of a fun gag.
There is when the
Um,
plane, as the plane is coming to a stop, Cyrus and Cage are fighting inside the plane, and there is this one of the most ridiculous things that ever happens in a movie is one of the propellers breaks off the plane and swoops around, cuts through the airplane and right between the
well, and
two of
Cyrus
them
has time to see it coming and lean
and move
back.
move out of the
Yeah.
way and cuts out the other side of the plane. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, so then Swamp Thing and it steals a fire truck
Well,
and
because yeah, so Swamp Thing, Cyrus, and Diamond Dog escape underneath the plane.
right. And
Yeah.
so they steal this fire truck, and apparently Cyrus and Diamond Dog are just going to hang out on the ladder for some reason, while
Why would you steal a
Swamp
fire
Thing.
truck? There's chaos everywhere. Grab the most basic looking car on the
Well,
strip.
there was also motorcycles right there, apparently, because
Well,
Nick Cage takes a motorcycle.
those are cop motorcycles, but like
Yeah,
I'm saying, like go grab like a Corolla that's sitting on the strip so you can get away and blend in. Why are you taking the biggest, loudest, most obvious vehicle in the parking lot?
I don't know, but you know what? It did get us some really cool stunts.
Yeah.
I will say the stunt work in this scene is really good. It's really fun. You get some of it is obviously like green screen, fake. Nick Cage is doing his own stunt type thing, but there's a lot of scenes where you can see the fire truck running on the road at speed and a
Mhm.
person actually hanging off the truck, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this, Derek. You were in Vegas recently.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember a 20-mile long tunnel off the strip?
Well, so that is a thing. So there's two strips in Vegas.
Well,
There's
not in 97, there's not.
well, so hang on. So I'm getting to it. The strip that people talk about today is not where the plane crashes. Because the strip today, as Ryan was saying, didn't exist back then. The old strip does have a cover over it. You can walk the old strip. There's a whole part of the old strip where it is covered with that cool looking ceiling. You can
Right,
zip line across it. Like it's a really cool space. So like that's what that's supposed to be. And there so that's north of where the strip is today. I think north.
right. But
Maybe
that
not
part
north.
that
That
was
might not be
only
right.
addressing part of my question.
Okay.
Because
Oh,
they
you
are
mean the
going
tunnel that the
at
fire truck is
speed.
going through?
Yes, they are driving at
Oh.
full speed through a tunnel for 6 minutes.
Okay, so to be fair, I have no idea if that tunnel exists.
I'm going to venture a guess to say it probably doesn't. And if it does, it's not that long.
I don't know because I don't know where that is in relation to the rest of the city. So I
There's,
right
in
because
any
there's no like
case,
landmarks for me. Like I have no idea where that's supposed to be.
literally right off the strip, which is where they landed, there's this huge long tunnel where they're going 45, 50, 60, 70. I don't know how fast,
It might
but
exist. I don't know.
they're driving this for a while. And there's like a chase happening and a shootout. It just seemed like that's probably not a real thing. Because here's why I say that. Because when they leave or when they get out of this tunnel, it's seemingly still on the strip based on what we're seeing, but you don't really see any you don't see any like actual places from the strip. It just kind of looks like the strip outside the tunnel.
Yeah.
But they wreck the fire truck and Cyrus is thrown through a sky bridge
Mm-hmm.
and then he lands on some power lines
Mm-hmm.
and then he falls through the power lines and directly into a piece of rock crushing equipment
Uh-huh.
to where his head is directly under a piston for that
Uh-huh.
and gets smashed. Now, where is this?
I don't
Where
know.
on the strip do they have a warehouse that's attached to a rock quarry right next to the Vegas Strip?
Well, I mean, a lot has changed in 25 years. So and
I'm
none of
just
that,
saying,
it's very
I don't
possible none of
think
that
that was a
exists
thing.
anymore. Well, because
I
like
don't think it ever did.
the hotel that the plane crashes into was actually being torn down. So it was going to be raised. So that's why they shoot the crash there because the building was being imploded anyway, right? So like the I don't know if any of that was real and just isn't anymore, I have no clue. I don't know that part of town at all. I
I'm
know
just
the modern strip.
my gut tells me that there's not a warehouse slash rock quarry directly on the other side of a sky bridge right off the strip.
I
That's
have
just what
no
my
idea.
gut is telling me. That's not really a
Yeah.
big tourist attraction in Vegas. Is
Wha-
the
But Vegas is a lot like Vegas is a lot more contained than I think people realize. Like if you get off the strip, you leave what feels like Vegas very, very quickly.
fair enough.
Right?
Um,
Like where I got my tattoo is not, it doesn't look like Vegas. It just looks like a town.
did
It
it
ha
seem
you
weird to
know?
you that they basically needed to Rasputin Cyrus the Virus, kill him 7 different ways? Like, as if the being
Mm.
launched at driving speed through a sky bridge isn't enough to kill you, but then you have to land on power lines, and that's also not enough to kill you. So now you have to literally have your head squished by a piece of industrial machinery.
I mean, to be fair, they show that he's still alive before he gets crushed.
That's true.
So,
But that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Like, does being a really badass criminal make you impervious to normal damage?
The whole thing, like, I don't know. I don't know why it had to be that way. Any one of those things could have killed him. He could have died in the plane crash. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think the crash was enough.
Yeah,
I think
they could have
have it
ended it there.
they could have ended it there, right? Had some of them die, maybe there is a bit of a fight scene that happens there on in that in front of the hotel or the casino or whatever. I don't know, but like the fire truck scene, as cool as some of the stunts are, I think it's just a bit too much.
Yeah, yeah. It felt like one of when Lord of the Rings movies had like 10 different endings.
Yeah, the Return of the
Like they could
King.
have, yeah, they could have ended it after the first one, but instead
Uh-huh.
they did the second and third. And that's kind of where this movie was too, because you get to the end of like that whole boneyard scene, and you're like, okay, this movie's got to be almost over. And then there's like another 30 minutes of tacked on shit. Um,
Hmm.
but then we get a scene of Nick Cage literally pulling this bunny. Somehow he just happened to wander across it right as it was going into a sewer, and he reaches in and pulls it out of a sewer,
Hmm.
and walks over to his daughter, who she doesn't hate him, but she's terrified of him. I mean, it's this grown ass man with long hair, covered in blood, wearing a tank top, very sweaty, just got done with a chase on a police bike,
I don't know how
and
they get there so fast.
just yanked this bunny out of the sewer to give to his
Yeah.
daughter. You're on the Vegas Strip, like surely in between where you killed Cyrus the Virus and the casino, like you could have stopped at any gift shop in there. I'm pretty
He doesn't
sure.
have any money.
It's better than a giant wreck. You could just loot something.
Oh yeah, because he's gonna go break some more laws.
He literally murdered people. I think he's
Bad
fine.
people, Ryan.
That doesn't make it okay.
The
Cool
D
motive, still murder.
the U.S. Marshals beg to differ in this movie.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, he gives her this like sewer covered bunny,
Hmm.
and she does not want it. And so he is clearly hurt. I'm giving the scene a lot of shit. I actually like this scene,
Yeah.
and I think that Nick Cage specifically was really good in this scene. His hurt, was really in my eyes believable. He really
Yeah.
sold this
Hmm.
in what is otherwise a completely ridiculous movie. And we've talked about how like some of the serious scenes don't resonate. This scene for me did resonate. I felt like he was really hurt and like going through something here, and that was a really nice thing to see in this otherwise ridiculous movie. But he's like, I meant to cut my hair, and you just kind of feel like, oh, it's not just the hair, man, and you kind of like feel bad because he's just done something heroic, you know,
Well, and
and
he's been looking forward to this moment for
yeah,
7, 8 years, right? And this is
and now
clearly
it's
not how he was
ruined.
hoping it was going to happen. I mean, he
Yeah,
goes out of his way to not have his daughter ever visit him because he didn't want her to meet him in
in
prison,
jail, yeah.
right? So like this is a big moment for him. And it's sad for a moment, but she does go and hug him, and it's all going to be okay, you know.
Yeah. As somebody who's been rejected by children before, when you just want to like be close to them or like have a relationship with them and they don't even want to give you the time of day, It sucks. And I imagine if it's your daughter, I imagine that's 10 times worse. Um,
Yeah,
but
look, look, I'm around my kid every single day, but there are plenty of times where she just prefers mom over me, and it never feels good,
but you
you
know
know?
what? Kira, your daughter, is the one that made me realize how great it is when a kid does want to be around you. You know what I mean?
She
Because
does really like you.
you had her before I had any children in my family.
Hmm.
And so she was kind of my first one of my first experience. We have another friend that had some kids, but I don't see them as often. So she was kind of my first experience in like watching somebody grow up and being around them before they, could talk and be a human, and to kind of being a human and be able to communicate and choose who they want to talk to and spend time with. So it's really nice when a kid does choose that they want to spend time with you. But yeah, but I could feel his hurt in that scene. That man, that
Yeah.
really fucking sucks. So yeah, anyway, that was a lot of information, but yeah, it really was relatable the way he was feeling there. So,
Well,
um,
and this is the first time I've watched this movie like as an experienced parent, because like when we did this last, like, he was only a couple of months old, so I really had no idea what I was
right,
doing yet, right? Um, and this movie does hit me differently now. I relate to the Poe character in a very different way than I did, in the past. It's certainly when I was watching this movie as a teenager and in,
right.
early 20 something,
Now it
I,
runs a little deeper for you.
yeah, so those scenes that maybe don't resonate as well as they were intended to, I think resonate more with me now than they ever did before. Because I can put myself in this guy's position a little bit more, right?
Yeah,
Because I'd like to believe that I would do the right thing, in these situations and try and, protect the people that need to be protected and stuff like that at the expense of maybe what I would want, you
right.
know? So I do connect more with it than I used to.
That's fair. I mean, I think that's realistic. And you used to have the similar temper to pre-jail Poe too. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
anyway, my last note for the movie is that now Steve Buscemi's character, despite them catching everybody else and them having the most security on him when he gets transferred over, they're just like, we don't need to look for him. He's fine. And now he's just gambling in a casino with like women are all around him and having the time of his life. Also, like people know who he is. All the other prisoners know about him. He's clearly been in the papers. The media has given him a nickname, but none of the people here in Vegas, even having a prison airplane wreck outside, are like, oh, maybe this guy is that serial killer.
I mean, I don't know how unrealistic that is because keep in mind, like even today, I don't know that most people know what these people look like, and it's like that joke about, the Superman Clark Kent thing, and people will pass, Henry Cavill on the street and not know who he is. Like, I think we're not going to sit there and assume, oh man, that's that one serial killer, right? You're going to be like, oh, that guy kind of looks familiar, and then move
Right,
on.
but I think you have to take the context though, is that there's literally a prison plane
The
just
people
landed.
inside gambling know that.
You think that nobody on that people on the strip didn't hear a plane wreck on the
No, no, no. Do they know that it's a convict plane?
I mean, they probably saw a lot of police officers. I mean, I don't know. I
It's a
think
plane
that
crash,
which in itself is pretty weird.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, we don't know. Is it supposed to be the same casino that the plane crashes into?
I don't know. It's
You know,
unclear,
right? Or like
but
how much
it's just
time has
weird.
passed,
It's
or
just
like,
weird. That's a small point. We don't need to get too
yeah,
caught up into that. But yeah, it's just a weird way to end the movie that we show that this serial killer is now free.
right? Like it's such a weird note to end on because Cyrus is a bad guy, no question about it, right? And he gets his due, and Diamond Dog gets his. Everybody else gets their due, except the person who's supposed to be the most feared person.
The worst person, yeah,
He
on
gets
the
like a
planet.
moment of redemption by not killing the kid that he
Yeah,
comes across,
yeah,
by just not killing somebody. That's his redemption
that's
arc,
his redemption
right?
arc of the
And
whole movie.
so
Yeah.
he gets to, there is a fan theory. It's ridiculous. There is a fan theory that he becomes Donnie from The Big Lebowski, that those are the same person,
Okay.
and that's like his new identity.
He doesn't really act the same, but you
Well,
know,
yeah, he's putting on a new persona so he doesn't get caught, and this, I don't know. I'm not saying I believe it, but
I don't
that's a
really
fan
buy into
theory.
that.
No? Okay.
So usually after these, I do a little browse on IMDb and read some of the 10-star reviews, some of the 1-star reviews,
They're all 10
and
out of 10s. There are no 1 stars.
there that is not true. There's 28 1-star reviews.
I find that offensive.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's start with those then, because I want you to be offended. Um, the title of this one is Awful, Utterly Awful. What an awful movie. Everything in this movie that makes it vaguely interesting has been done in dozens of movies with far better results. There's practically nothing original in Con Air. This is a Schwarzenegger Stallone wannabe. There are far better one-liners in Total Recall and far better action scenes in First Blood than in this knockoff. This is a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, washed out, unnecessary, and says the same stuff as all the action films that preceded it. Plus, it's just badly made. Nicolas Cage is not only a fish out of water here, he's at his hammiest worst. Disagree. The action scenes and stunts are just goofy. The jokes have been done over and over again. It's just lame. The only redeeming quality is Steve Buscemi, but even there, he's been in a lot better roles. Watch Fargo or something. A terrible movie. Shame on you, Hollywood.
Reviews like that. Do people not remember what First Blood is?
I feel like they have it like raised in their head as something beyond what it really was.
Right? First Blood's a very certain movie that is not what people claim it is most of the time. Go rewatch First Blood. It's a great movie. I'm not dissing it, but it's not some like massive 80s action flick. That's not what
Right.
it is.
The title on this one is One Positive Thing. This movie sucks on all sides. Too much testosterone, the bad accent of Nicolas Cage. The movie irritated me the whole time, but there was something positive. Steve Buscemi. He was the
Oh,
one that made the movie a bit enjoyable and proves why he's one of my favorite actors. Usually I like Nicolas also, but he really messed up this time.
ouch.
This next one is okay if it weren't based on total ignorance of diabetes. Unbelievable how little research is done for multi-million dollar productions these days. Given the fact that about 5 to 10% of American people suffer from diabetes, it shouldn't be that difficult to get a few facts straight. Diabetics do not die or display symptoms as suggested in the movie if they don't get enough insulin. A lack of insulin only causes a high blood sugar level, which is harmless unless sustained for years. Instead, the opposite, a low blood sugar level, will cause the symptoms shown. The condition, however, is not life-threatening and can be easily cured by eating some food. Unfortunately, the whole plot collapses if you consider these facts. The whole plot isn't set around diabetes.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
This one, La Creme de la Crap. This movie may very well be the epitome of the brainless, contrived action flick. Nicolas Cage, convicted of a crime he didn't commit, naturally. He did commit that. They show it very clearly that he committed that crime. Looks like Fabio's anemic half brother posing for GQ and spouting Schwarzenegger-esque lines that will leave you
Jesus.
dumbfounded, while Malkovich has apparently learned to act in his sleep. Stupid does not begin to explain this movie, but stupid is how I felt because I actually watched the whole damn thing. Okay,
That was harsh.
that was a lot.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Classic one-liners and nonstop action. Not only was Con Air the best movie of 1997, it's an all-time pleaser. It keeps you on the edge of your seat and laughing the whole time. With nonstop action and hundreds of classic one-liners, this movie just can't lose. Okay. The most realistic movie ever. 10 out of 10. The movie begins in Mobile, Alabama, which is known for its numerous travel by waterway.
Oh, okay.
Cameron Poe steps off a boat outside a bar to meet his obviously pregnant wife. Oh, yeah, his obviously pregnant wife with six packs abs. Yes, okay. I didn't read far enough. I agree.
So is this a
As
sarcastic review? I don't understand.
I think so. And three men harass and then attempt to rape Trisha. A fight breaks out between three assailants and Cameron. One pulls a knife and Cameron kills him in self-defense. His lawyer fights to prove Poe's innocence by using the bold strategy of having Poe, who's justified and had his own wife as a witness to this attack, plead guilty to make sure Poe doesn't do a long sentence. The judge takes mercy on Poe since he's an Army Ranger and gives him 10 years. Poe is sent to San Quentin prison in California because that's where people from Alabama do hard time. Poe is paroled by, I'm assuming, great work done by his top-notch lawyer and is hitching a ride home on a plane filled with the worst of the worst criminals. Now, I don't want to spoil much more. I'm just going to mention a few things. The prisoner's plan spearheaded by a maniac that has no chance of working without unforeseen events like a DEA agent sneaking a pistol on a plane or the co-pilot not locking the door to the cockpit. But it says decides to be a hero and take a pistol out of a lockbox to check on the train guards. Knowing a sandstorm will pop up at the exact time they land in Carson City, Nevada, which conceals their identity. The plane circling back over Fresno, where Poe drops a dead body that falls from an extreme height, obliterating a car, but the body is intact with a perfectly legible message. Larkin drives a Corvette from San Quentin, California to Lerner Airfield and beats the plane there because a vet is faster than a plane. Why they had to land a plane on the Vegas Strip, even though the airport is less than 3 miles from the Strip. This movie will show you things you'd never think of, like the perfect getaway vehicle being a big fire truck. Nice.
I did
Uh,
call that up.
the most true to life part of this film is Nicolas Cage's accent. I swear you'll think you're in Alabama. It's so spot on.
Oh my
This
God.
movie even had divine intervention that will make atheists accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. This film does the Lord's work with sweet guitar riffs playing to lead you all the way to heaven. That's how powerful it is. Okay, I want to be friends with that person.
Oh my God.
Kool-Aid Bro wrote that. So thank you, Kool-Aid Bro. You hit a lot of the points that we talked about. But yeah, I'm going to end those on that because I think
That's
that one
yeah,
was a good all-encompassing review.
very well written. Yeah,
Yes,
that was
agreed.
great.
So now we have to rate this movie
Jesus.
on our Cajo meter and on our quality meter.
Yeah.
This is a tough one. We've never had to, even when we did our last podcast, we didn't rate this movie in any way. We just discussed it. So
Hmm.
it is harder when you have to actually rate it.
Well, and it's very hard for me to be objective with this movie because this has been a favorite of mine, for 20 something years.
Yeah.
I've watched it a ton of times and I still love this movie. Like, yeah, it's obviously ridiculous, for all the reasons we've discussed. But I love this movie. I'd watch it again tonight. Like I love it. So it is very hard for me to be objective about it. So I'm just kind of like looking at some of the other stuff that we have here, and it's really hard to say. I'm gonna go with a. I'm gonna say 14.
Which seems high, but I think in terms of the middle of the road movies of quality, this is on the better end of that in terms of enjoyability. Maybe it's not more well written than Primal or some of these other movies, but it is more enjoyable than those movies, in my opinion. So I was going to give it a 13, so I'm with
Oh,
you.
okay, cool.
It's not like a secret that I love this movie. In fact, I said that early on. And it
No,
is
I
hard to be
know.
objective,
Yeah. I
but
just wasn't sure if I was maybe overdoing it. I was looking at some of the other ones and I was like, well, I I put it on par with The Weatherman and Lord of War.
I agree, yeah.
So,
For different reasons, but yeah,
yes,
those were
yeah.
better quality movies, but this one was probably more enjoyable.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
Now caginess, that's a tough one. He other than like the accent, he's not really cagey in this. It's an
Um,
action flick, but
I think he is cagey in this in a different way.
okay.
So he has the accent through the whole movie,
Hmm.
which is very cagey. But I think he's playing an over the top character throughout the movie, even if it's not his normal outbursting. He's giving a lot of like one liners. It's a very we don't get a lot of action movie Cage, right? There may be movies where he's in that are action movies, but he's not usually an action hero in those movies.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So I think this was him putting it. I don't think it's his cagiest movie ever by any means. I think it's below a 10,
Okay.
but I think it's cagier than it would appear on the surface, just because it's not the kind of traditional cageisms that we're used to seeing.
Hmm.
You get the scene where he steps out and he's just is like smiling with his hair blowing in the wind. Your
Uh,
favorite, your
my
favorite
gift.
scene, or like when he's like rampaging towards the front of the plane and gets shot in the arm and just keeps going. There's things like that are more subtle,
Yeah.
cageisms, that I think give it a little bit higher score than it would get otherwise.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I
So,
think I'm probably around a 7 or an 8 on this one.
oh man, I was gonna give it an 8.
Yeah. Well, let's just both go with an 8 since that
Okay.
was my first instinct.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, cool. Very good. So a 13 and a half on quality and an 8 on caginess. I mean, I think that's fair.
It's kind of annoying because that doesn't really make it stand out from the pack in any way on our board.
No.
Um, but it does stand out in terms of all the movies we've watched. It does, but we have to be honest with what it actually is. I think and that's.
Well, because we're trying to be, consistent, as
Yes.
consistent as we can be for a group of movies where we haven't already seen everything. I think that,
Right.
like, this is obviously not his best role, right? I think if you've been listening to the show, you know that I think his best work is Pig, right? Now I haven't seen
Right.
everything yet, so grain of salt, but that's my opinion today.
Well, with like 65 movies down, that's where you're at.
I mean, this is number 67,
Yeah.
so that's where I'm at. My favorite role is this one. This is my personal favorite, right? I love it. It's my favorite one to watch. Like I said, just watch it over and over again. It's not his best work. It's my favorite,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, okay. So I think then what's next is we have to figure out which movie joins our Wheel O Cage. So for those who don't know, we spin our Wheel O Cage to find out which movie we watch next on the show. Con Air comes off the wheel, and replacing Con Air is USS Indianapolis Men of Courage.
Okay.
So I've definitely seen the poster for it. He's all in like the white, navy uniform and all that jazz. So that joins the wheel. So you'll have to watch the Wheel O Cage to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we watch next. I will say that Face Off is on the wheel, so we do have another one of the Trinity that is eligible. A couple
Right.
other movies on the wheel include Bringing Out the Dead, Renfield, um, and Honeymoon in Vegas are all on the wheel among others. So those are all eligible to be picked as our next film.
Yeah. So yeah, tune in for that wheel spin and tune in for whatever we're reviewing next. And check out our bingo card where we go through this movie and see if either of us got a bingo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's really weird to me that we got our first bingo the episode before we got to the Trinity.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very,
that's weird.
yeah. But yeah, you can find us at comingofcage.com for all of our links. You can subscribe to the Coming of Cage podcast on your podcast app of choice. You can also watch us on the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. Ryan, anything else on Con Air?
Let me think. Yeehaw.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We will catch you next time.